Okay, everyone, welcome back. Let's go ahead and do a final review for Module 2 on critical thinking and organizing. Again, some discussion about critical thinking and the concept of organizing, some general thoughts. First of all, critical thinking is required at the beginning, and that leads to the organizing. Now, again, organizing is taking these critical thoughts and putting them in some form of sequence that makes sense, and then once we do this, it then leads to more effective communication. Moving on, there's two types of thinking that we talked about during this module. First is the subjective, and then there's the critical. Now, the subjective thought is our daily, everyday, rum-dum type of thinking. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. As you can tell by the scale, it's unbalanced because there's a lot of interference in our thinking, but it's good thinking. Again, it takes up the majority of your thinking, possibly up as high as 90% of your thinking. But again, it is very basic thinking, which we do, which we need to do also. Next, we have our critical thought, which is far more in-depth thought. This is where we actually focus in on our thinking, and basically, as I've mentioned before, my definition of critical thought is thinking about your thinking as you're thinking in order to improve your thinking. The consequences are phenomenal. Getting there, though, is not terribly easy. Now, why do we need critical thought? Now, if you've had psychology, you've seen the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, the survival stuff is at the very bottom of the pyramid. That is the basic stuff we do, and generally the easy stuff that we do. As we move up the pyramid, up to self-actualization, it becomes more difficult, as you can see the scale. Easy stuff up to the harder stuff. Not only does it take more time as you move up, it takes more energy and it takes more thought. Subjective thought at the survival level, and as you move up the scale, it requires more critical thinking. So let's talk about this thing, critical thinking. Again, it is very clear and it is very rational. It is balanced thinking. Something we do, we focus in on, we pay attention to, we consider many things involved. It is reflective and independent thought. Reflective meaning, again, we're thinking about our thinking. What is it that we are thinking about? What is it that we need to think about? It is also independent. It is something that we do generally and most often do independently by ourselves. Yes, we can brainstorm with other people, but then again, it could lead into the potential for biases and whatnot. But so, from our point of view, it is reflective and it is independent in nature. In the process of critical thinking, we must focus in on the elimination of biases, prejudice, and emotion. Again, these are difficult things to eliminate. These are things that make us who we are. They come from many forms. Culture is extremely involved in this, particularly in the biases and the prejudice. The emotion is something that is somewhat different from person to person. But again, these all interfere with our critical thought. These are very prominent in our subjective thought, but we need to be attentive to these. Again, this is not an easy task. It takes time to do it well. However, the more you do it, the easier it does become. Finally, it is required in business. Yes, you're going to do a lot of subjective thought, but if you want for a business to be successful, critical thought is a mandatory activity. Talk a little bit about organizing. Well, organizing begins with ideas, and they're just a bunch of ideas. Okay, this is part of the critical thinking. You come up with ideas. Some are good, some not so good, some are keepers, some are throwbacks, so on. But once we get these ideas and we think we have all the ideas that we need at a point in time, we need to put them in order. And it's generally not, I wouldn't say chronological order, but order of meaning. Meaning that would have meaning for us as well as meaning for the person with whom we're going to share them. Now, how do we best put these in order? Well, when it comes to writing, if we're going to use written communication or any form of communication for that matter, but primarily, especially for written communication, outlining is going to be key to successful ordering. Outlining is nothing but a tool. It's not the cure-all for our communication needs. It's just one of many things. Now, yes, our subjective thought, we do that in our heads quickly without thinking. However, critical thought, we need to outline. So again, it is a tool. It could be very simple. It could be very complex. But again, we take the ideas, we put them in order, and in this tool of outlining, we briefly list them. And again, it is best to do this in writing. It can be very formal and informal, totally up to you. But this ordering, this outlining provides understanding, provides meaning. And that's why it is important that we do it in some way, shape, or form prior to our writing. It doesn't seem like it would be time efficient, but it certainly is. And the more complex the communication is, the more the possibilities for error in presenting of information, ideas. Now, if we actually spent some time and ordered our thoughts in some form of outline, as we develop the communication, there is significantly less likelihood that there will be missed, out of place, out of sequenced, ordered information that we are relaying. Now, once we start misplacing, putting things out of sequence, the receiver is going to be confused. Communication is going to fail. So yes, though it may take a little upfront time, in the overall scheme of things, it is far more efficient to do this. Finally, format. Well, there's many formats, and let's go ahead about format here a little bit. Here's a more traditional approach. We kind of talked about this in class. We have our very basic English composition format where we have Roman numerals and we have capital letters and Arabic numbering and so on and so on and so on. It is very structured according to what English mandates, and that's perfect. That's fine. If it works for you, that's great. I think the important thing here is that what we see here in the indentation is the indentation from the Roman numeral 1 to A, from A to numbers 1 and 2. That suggests there's order and relationship. 1 and 2 relates to A relates to Roman numeral 1. Now, I myself am not as structured. I don't have to do this anymore. And I use more of a very basic in this case I'm showing you a 5-paragraph essay outline. Again, it still shows order. I have to think about it. I have to put things in sequence. I have to determine how one point relates to another, and so on and so on. Now, when we get into the writing, you will see that there is a micro and a macro relationship in the writing. And the outline helps to show this, and we will talk more about this as time goes on. A couple of final thoughts when it comes to critical thinking and organizing. First of all, critical thinking for our purposes is mandatory. If we want to be successful, primarily in our business life, or in some cases our lives, we need to be able to develop an effective means of critical thought. Organizing of these thoughts is also mandatory, particularly when we want to communicate our critical thoughts with another individual or individuals. Finally, if we are successful in creating critical thinking and the organizing of our thoughts, this is going to help lead to greater efficiency in our communication process. That, folks, pretty much wraps up Module 2. Now, when you are done watching this, you can go ahead and complete the Module 2 quiz. That's it for now. Thanks. Have a great day.